Alright, Datalore. This is one of the quintessential episodes for exploring Data's past. This is an episode where we learn more about Data than ever before, and it establishes several aspects of Data that are pivotal to the way the character would be written moving forward. That being said, the whole Android thing with Data and lore is the A plot. This actually has a B plot too. He's like the B plot in this one actually kind of sort of hinted as existing in the opening teaser. But people are like, oh, this is weird. I wonder what happened. They find out later. That would be the Crystalline Entity. So he's like, here's the thing. There's this Earth colony that disappeared from the planet 26 years ago, and the whole planet now appears to be dead. That's because the Crystalline Entity ate the biosphere. Yeah, that's how it lives, is that it eats the biospheres of planets as a form of food for itself. And that is strange. But it's just what the Crystalline Entity does. It's a space monster doing space monster things. It's a very sci-fi concept. Well, that being said, the majority of the episode is about lore. See, Soong created multiple androids. He did a lot of work on androids, and as of the end of TNG, including the movies, we actually have seen 4 different functional Soong-type androids in the show, I think. Maybe more, but at least 4. This is the episode where we find the second one. We later on find... Also, notably, in the opening where we first find out who Data is, it's explicitly stated that Soong was actually intentionally making the androids have skin pigmentation that didn't look human, just to make them obviously not human. Well, it's also explicitly stated that he did that more for an aesthetic choice than because he needed to. And one of the other Soong-type androids actually ends up being, flawlessly human-looking. Which, again, when Data created Lol, at first she doesn't have a humanoid exterior at all. It's just kind of like a android chassis wandering around. Well, Lol decides she wants to look like a human, a female. So, Data makes her look flawlessly normal looking, like a completely indistinguishable from a human woman. Which again, for prop making stuff is easy, I guess. Now, one thing about this that's interesting, though, is the fact that in the Star Trek universe, androids may be something that is unusual and not commonplace. Okay? Most societies do not have functional AIs. Most societies do not have automated beings walking around doing tasks for them. However, the Federation has been seeing androids since early TOS, so Soong-type androids really aren't new as a concept. They're just a different form of androids that are in some ways better than the previous ones. Arguably, you could argue the ILEA probe from the motion picture was actually an android of some sort. That was complicated. But like the Andromedan androids from TOS were explicitly stated to have emotions. They were designed, in fact, to be able to mimic the emotional responses of the individual they were copying. Then there's Mudd's women, which, while not the most sophisticated androids, were functional and did, what you would expect an android to do. They weren't as intelligent as Data, but they were actually approximately equal to a human in intelligence. They really were. So they weren't dumb. Because, like, one of the things with Soong-type androids is Soong-type androids actually have superhuman intelligence. That's actually one of the big deals with them, is that they can think faster than a human can and process much greater volumes of information than a human can. And that was actually what made B4 different from Data, is that B4 had a simpler, less powerful positronic matrix and was perhaps the first positronic matrix that Soong had actually managed to stabilize so that it wouldn't suffer from cascade failure like LOL did. Because, again, while Soong pioneered positronic matrices as a form of digital brain, he didn't actually tell anyone in the Federation how to make it work. In fact, when Data asks Soong about it in person, Soong doesn't tell Data either. That's interesting. Anyway, so using this in a TTRPG. Well, the Crystalline Entity plot is actually something that's I've always personally found to be interesting, because while in the show it is treated as a singular entity because the Federation only knows of the existence of one of them, it's entirely possible that there's more than one, because we don't actually know where the horrible thing came from. It's a giant space crystal that eats the biospheres of planets and doesn't have a known point of origin. In theory, the Federation could attempt to track it back to its source by looking for dead worlds with the characteristic signatures. However, it's possible that those signatures only last a certain amount of time, so at some point they would be like, oh, this is something that could possibly be a Class M planet but doesn't have a functional biosphere. Is it because the crystalline entity ate the biosphere? I don't know. But in theory, one could attempt to do such things, because one thing we do know is that if the crystalline entity eats the biosphere of a planet with technology, it won't erase the existence of the technology of the people living on the planet. So buildings, cars, shuttlecraft, stuff like that, those will still be left behind after the population that created them has been extinct. Also, the crystalline entity doesn't kill androids, because androids aren't alive, and thus it can't eat their whatever energy. Kind of a significant plot point, and the explanation for why Lore is willing to be allied with the thing. Because it's kind of sort of like one of those like greater vampire packs, and Lore is kind of like a simp for the greater vampire and is helping the greater vampire do things. Why exactly Lore wants to help the crystalline entity in the big picture, I have no idea. This is something they never explain. How does Lore know how to talk to the thing? We know he does. In fact, the fact that Lore knows how to talk to the thing becomes a plot point in the episode where they shatter it, because of the fact that they use the methodology that Lore used to talk to it. They don't actually know what they're saying, but they use it to trick the crystalline entity into letting its guard down for a moment, and then shatter it with some sort of gravitational flux thing. And then it's supposedly dead. Again, where the Crystalline Entity came from, if you were doing a TTRPG, that is actually something you could play with a lot. It is a huge, terrifyingly powerful creature. However, if it's not the only one of its kind, perhaps there are smaller ones in the universe. Most terrifyingly is the idea that maybe, possibly, it reproduces as part of this cycle of devouring planets. Something to consider, hey. In Star Trek Birth of the Federation, there is actually only one space monster that reproduces, and that's the Borg. Literally the only one that reproduces. But every other space monster is just a unique entity. Now, doing TTRPG plots involving androids. I mentioned this in some of the other episodes, but in this one is that Star Trek has a lot of different kinds of androids. If you really want to do an android plot, you really don't need to feel the need to have the plot involve Soong-type androids at all. See, one thing that is a logical disconnect that I personally have as a hang-up with Soong-type androids is all that emphasis on how mysterious and wonderful positronic matrices are. And okay, yes, it is a powerful computer, and it does work quite well for making data have a brain. However, as was demonstrated in The Big Goodbye, you don't need a positronic matrix to have a functional AI. Taking any old functional AI and putting it into a mechanical body would give you a functional android, which is apparently how many of the other androids work in Star Trek. They don't do the whole positronic matrix thing. They don't bother with having a weird, mystical kind of pseudo-technology, because in-universe logic says you don't need it. Like, seriously. I can think off the top of my head of like 4 different kinds of androids, and none of them actually had any sort of secret sauce like that in them. Okay, never mind. One of them is the ILEA probe, which is explicitly stated to have copied ILEA so faithfully that it somehow copied her personality as part of the making a artificial recreation of the character. Don't understand how that's supposed to work, but again, it's one of those sci-fi logic things where Ali is basically stated to have the technological equivalent of individual cells in her body. Like, she's such a complicated mechanical entity that she actually has a cellular structure. That is a wild concept. Really interesting stuff. And then you have stuff like the Andromedan androids, which the Andromedan androids, some of them are in fact designed from the ground up to be duplicates of a specific person, and in some ways to be a copy of that person in personality and not just appearance. See, here's the thing though, is that the Andromedan androids compared to Soong-type androids aren't physically all that threatening, and aren't mentally all that threatening either, because they're actually not all that much smarter than humans, and approximately, I think in the episode that he actually said that he was twice as strong as Kirk is. And like, wait a second, that's not all that scary. However, I mean, actually trying to wrestle someone who is your same height and build as you, but twice as strong, would in real life be a major challenge, because you need to outmaneuver them. You can't match them in strength. So, which in the episode resulted in Kirk beating the guy with a stalactite, because if you can't match someone in a fair fight, well, it wasn't a fair fight in the first place. Anyway, so you doing stuff with androids, you could just literally make up your own. Because, like I said earlier, is that the idea of just taking an AI, like, you know, the holodeck episodes have AIs of various characters. Just throw one of those into an android body. That would work. In fact, that's functionally what they did in Voyager with the Doctor. They gave him a mobile emitter, which is not the same thing as an android body, but it means that he's able to just wander around the same way that an android would. And the mobile emitter, while it's based on future technology, is in fact a device smaller than Data's positronic matrix. Yeah, that's the part I always found strange about positronic matrices. By in-universe logic standards, positronic matrices aren't actually all that powerful as computers, seemingly anyways. Well, they're, they're written up as being special, but it's like, what makes them special again? I don't know. Anyway, that's something you could have fun with it in TTRPG. There's a lot of different angles you could run with in Android stories, and Soong-type androids have a very specific list of strengths and weaknesses, which you could use, or you could use a different set if you wanted to. Heck, if you wanted to do something weird, you could do something Terminator style where... Or Daryl. Oh, Daryl. Yeah, that was something screwball. Old movie from the 80s or 90s about someone who had this brilliant idea to create artificial life. Well, see, the problem with their artificial life is that they hadn't developed android bodies yet. So they came up with some method of taking a computer and putting it into a body of a living human, thus making something that's, I guess, a cyborg technically, because it has a mechanical brain inside of a human body. You could play with an idea like that in a TTRPG in the Star Trek setting, because they do actually have the idea, especially with Borg stuff, of, you know, having implants in someone's brain that are actually what's controlling their body and not, you know, their what they actually want. Although in the case of Star Trek, you can also go with the idea that their their brain has been slowly replaced with implants to the point where, oh wait, no, it's not really a human anymore. Yeah, again, there's options. At any rate, I think I've covered enough on this one, because it has a bunch of interesting plot elements that you could do stuff with. It's a very specific story for a very specific character, and if you're not playing that character, you need to make a different story to go with that. So it's very again, it's kind of like doing... Well, okay, TNG had a lot of them, episodes that focus on a specific character. You can't just copy that and have a TTRPG crew do it, because of the fact that they're not that character. Oh, here's another thing, though, that's interesting about this episode. The holographic wall stuff. Soong built his hidden base so that certain parts of the base, well, if you didn't look very, very carefully, looked like they weren't there. Yeah, that's a fun thing. Because, like, apparently the base had actually been raided, but the people raiding the base had actually missed lore. because lore had been hidden away so carefully that the people who walked in, looted the place, and left just missed him. And with that thought, I'm going to call it here. See you guys later.